And we are on. What's up, everybody? I hope you missed me. And if you know, even if I know you didn't, I do. Well, by that I mean I'm really in the mood to basically vent a little bit. So, this video is going to be a little bit of a rant. And it's gonna be a rant because some things really annoy me. Because I keep on hearing people that basically don't know much about these kinds of situations that you know some situations happen, and if some situations happen, we should have been able to prevent it. Let's take for instance what is going on right now in Eastern Europe. So pretty much everybody knows about the conflict. I'm not gonna get into it. I don't care about the political side, and not even about the tactical slash strategic side of it. For a while now, I've been interested in the lesser known aspects of warfare, the nit and gritty part of it, the behind the scenes part of waging war. And I think this interest came to me after watching a video made by Historia Militium, I think it's called, the channel. Very good channel, shout out to him, in which he basically talks about the logistical chain. Sorry, hope you can hear me. Hope you can hear me better now. Anyways, in which he talks about the logistical chains of Roman armies, and to most people, it would sound like, well, that is boring. And to a point, it is reasonably boring, but on the other hand, it is absolutely essential if you want to win a war. Because, as I think Caesar in his memoir said about the Chatti tribe, whilst everybody and I'm paraphrasing here, so it's not exact words, but the gist of it was, whilst everybody was going to battle, the Chatti were going to campaign. By that I mean they do things in a similar way to the Roman way, which is they get ready for war, i.e., long-term combat, long-term conflict. And one of the things that to me personally feels a little bit surprising is that not a lot of people actually understand the effort that a state need to put in so that it can have an army in the field. Because an army in the field, contrary to popular belief, is not like some dudes gathered in the middle of nowhere starting to fight pitch battles and then going back home. Well, that was in the what, pre kingdom period of Rome? Like, seriously. Waging war is an incredibly difficult undertaking. You need to be able to support an army in the field. And disclaimer, everything I'm gonna say right now in this live stream, I don't know how long it's going to be, is not scripted, and I'm talking straight out of the memory. So keep that in mind. Second thing is that I really enjoy going off tangents, so if anybody's around here, just send me a comment and um, come back to what I was talking initially. That being said, back to our logistical things. A great general once said that amateur stock strategy, professional stock logistics. And I think that, to me at least, the war that encapsulate that very thing in the best way possible was the Second World War. And right now I want to take a step back and think about why that is. Well, before the United States joined the war, Germany had a pretty important advantage. And in my fair and honest opinion, bar two events, Germany would have won Second World War. And those two events are the Battle of England and the attack on Pearl Harbor. One was their very own doing, and the other one, well, I don't think they had much saying in it. But if the Germans wouldn't have started to bomb, or at least try to bomb British cities into submission, I don't think the British would have been that desperate in the first place. Or, even better, after the fall of France, they should have kept to their own thing and focus on the Eastern War. And I say this because it's really coming together with my logistics theory. You see, Germany didn't really have the manpower or the resources to keep basically two state armies in the field at the same time and to win both engagements. Well, I say both, but haven't said anything about the North African campaign, which again, that would be three fronts. Coming back, a good example of an army that, at least theoretically, should be able to do that exact thing is the current US military. Because for those of you who don't know, the US Army right now is configured in a way that it can fight two wars at the same time on opposite sides of the planet and win them both. This is not my opinion. This is expert opinion. And why, or rather how, they can do that? The answer is industry and resources. Coming back to my little rant about the Roman logistics. Well, they had the cursus publicum, which was the road system of the Roman Empire that allowed for troops, material, supplies to move relatively quickly from one side of the empire to another. Now, that might seem logical, but is not that easy because you can have the roads, so the avenues of transporting and the capacity of transporting goods, but you also need the industrial power to create those goods. You need powerful agriculture, a powerful agricultural sector. You need a pretty well developed industry so that it can take care of your army's needs in the field. And a lot of people, come on, oh, seriously, I don't want you. I want your baby. Come on, follow me. Good boy. Goodbye. I'm really not that hungry, but a little piggy is gonna be good. Anyways, back to what I was saying. You need the you need the production capacity, and that is something that the Americans had plenty of in the Second World War. But that production capacity didn't come out of nowhere. They weren't created as a country with that production capacity. That production capacity was prepared and set up in the interwar period with some contracts that today would not fly. But that's besides the point of this conversation, in which those contracts were basically the US Army would go to the civilian sector and say, we would want X equipment, and how good you can make it, first of all, and second of all, how fast you can scale up production. Because even today, and this is something that kind of surprised me, and to a no less extent, we meet this, I'm gonna call it shock of industrial war. I mean, most states are not prepared, they don't have the stockpiles to fight an industrial war like the one in Ukraine right now. I think at the most, at the hardest points of the conflict, somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 to 100,000 shells were being used by both sides in a single day. Let me say that again. 100,000. That is a huge consumption. And granted, the NATO armies thought about this particular problem, and they got to this really interesting solution, which is standardization. A single caliber, regardless of what weapon system they use, they had the same caliber. Let's talk about artillery. The 155 is the standard NATO artillery shell. The 5.56 is the standard NATO round. For their assault rifle, the 751 by 751 by 51, I think, is the heavier round. Again, it's standard. So no matter where you fight, theoretically, and no matter what armies you have around, let's say you have the Germans, the French, and the Americans, they pretty much use the same equipment, or at least they have the same logistical tail, i.e., they need the same logistical support. So they don't have to look around for, let's say, a Russian style former Romanian shell from the AK. The what, 5 by 49, whatever the caliber is. Don't remember from the top of my head. So that's one thing. You have the same equipment, no matter who you're fighting alongside of. Let's just check this a little bit. Good. So let me just check the map real quick. Come on. Okay. Let's see where those deers went. Because I kind of really need a nest right now, but I'm still not empty enough to take a nest, but also need to heal up. Oh my god, I'm orange. Not fun. So anyways, why standardization? Well, simple. It's easier to make a lot of one thing than to make a lot of things. And right now, both the Russians and the Ukrainians have a similar-ish problem, although the Ukrainian problem is a little bit more complicated because the Russians have a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff by means of calibers, especially in artillery. So you have the 122, you have the 120s, you have the 152s, and how are you going to make all of those and the quantities required? Everybody knows the problems that Ukraine has because it needs to find the shells for its Soviet weapons and also for their new NATO equipment. And of course, right now, if I heard correctly, they're gonna slowly but surely out quit using their uh, former Soviets calibers. But right now, they're not in the position in which they can, give up firepower that easily. So that's one thing. Where those tears went? I'm always surprised of how fast some of the AI goes away in this game. They're there? Oh no, they're not. How lucky of me if they were there. Anyways, so I'm still a little bit hurt, and as an aside, I'm actually doing my best not to walk that much at night in this game because even with night vision, if you're playing like me in the jungles, you're gonna find yourself pretty quickly way too close for comfort to a ravine or a cliff, and then you're gonna get wounded or even better, dead. So that's one thing. Another thing, and this is a tip to your players, always do your very best to keep your stamina high. Because in this game, if you're running out of stam, you're dead. The other day I was playing as a Serato on the Southern Plains, and I was basically desperate and really hungry, and I tried to steal some food from a croc. Naturally, he wasn't very excited about the prospect, and he managed to drag me down twice. I managed to escape twice, got on shore, and surprise, surprise, I was out of stam. So the croc actually managed to catch up with me. And I don't really understand how he managed to keep hold of his stam for that long, but that's this problem beside the point. Now back to our logistics. When could somebody say in earnest that logistics don't really count? When you're fighting on home turf, but not even there, or when you're planning a very short campaign, let's say, and I'm pulling this out of my hat, a 3 day special military operation. Yeah, that sounds fair. 3 days. Well, your soldiers can carry their MREs. You don't really need that much food, that much fuel, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, 3 days should be plenty good enough. But after those 3 days, you need to have the logistical chains to support it. And from my extensive time spent on YouTube, on channels like the Chieftains, there are two types of logistic systems, the push and pull systems. The push system that the Russians are using basically means that you, comrade, I need ammunition for the 155 millimeter guns, and I also need RPG and fuel and so on. But I am a division, or what's it? How do how the Russians call that? Battalion Tactical Group. Yeah, the BTG. Well, the Russian planners know that the BTG in combat theoretically needs X amount of every single equipment type, or X amount of supplies, let's say food, water, fuel, and so on and so forth, replacement components. Well, the Russians simply send all of that to the front line. And you might say, well, it's good because that means they can use as much stuff as they need because they know they are going to receive a lot of stuff back. And to a point, yes, you're right. But, oh, sorry, little, come here, little piggy. Who's attacking who right now? That's my question. Yes, I'm attacking you, my friend. Anyways, I really need to fill up my diet. And those deers would have made a great addition to my dead, but whatever. So, come on. Am I gonna get to halfway? Let's see. Yeah, a little over. That's good enough. Usually after I kill something, I hang around, try to find a rock and just guard it. Well, or at least stay close to it. But I'm not gonna do that right now because I'm starting to get thirsty, and if there's one thing I've learned as a croc is never good if you are thirsty, and it's also not good. Bloody pigs. It's not good to be wounded. Wow, there's big fish here. I'm surprised. I'm really surprised, to be honest with you. Anyways, let's go back, and yep, I'm gonna call it for a few minutes until my stamina gets back up and my hunger starts to grow and I'm healing. Now, back to what I was talking about. A push system is very good as long as your calculations are good and, more importantly, the things are going the right way for you. By that I mean, if you lose a lot of equipment, if you lose a lot of manpower, if you have a lot of casualties, if the fighting is more intense than you planned or expected, you're gonna need more material delivered to you than you would normally would. That might be an exception, but in wars, which are famously unpredictable, exceptions can turn into rules. And how about the push system, the pull system? That this is the NATO system of logistics, basically, which is a commander in the field sends a requirement for X amount of ammunition, X amount of food, X amount of water, X amount of fuel, X amount of spare parts, and they are delivered. So, if in the Russian system things move from the top down, in the NATO systems things move from bottom up. And this is because the commander in the field, at least in theory, knows better what his requirements are than the chief of staff, who most likely it's hundreds, if not thousands, of kilometers away from the front line, and most likely working on incomplete information. Because let me give you a surprise news. In 2024, you still have blue on blue engagements. For those of you who don't know, blue on blue means that friendly forces are fighting each other, thinking that they're part of enemy units. And to a lot of people, this thing might be surprising. And it is this way because, in my opinion at least, because of computer games. Let's take, for instance, I don't know, World of Tanks or even War Thunder. You know exactly where your friendlies are. And if you don't know exactly, you have a reasonably good idea of where they are. In war, you have a reasonably good idea of where they are, but it might become difficult to identify because explosions, smoke, be it from fires or being generated intentionally, stress, tiredness, and so on and so forth. Everybody needs to understand that wars are not those chivalrous engagements that or idealized conflicts between gentlemen. Wars are tough, and they're tough on everybody. They're tough on the guys who fight them. They're tough on the civilian populations that they fight in or around of. After I started studying history at the amateur level, trying to learn as much as I can about past conflicts, I've managed to get to the point in which I can safely say that most of today's conflicts are similar in many aspects to conflicts of the past, be it from the simply tactical things to the difficulties that every single soldier faces in a frontline situation, to the trauma, the suffering, the stress. These are all basically standard experiences of men going to war. I remember watching a mini documentary on YouTube about a study made by the US Army after the Second World War, in which they concluded that only 2% of all active participants in the war actually shot to kill. Let me say that again, 2% out of all soldiers on the front line shot to kill. Now don't get me wrong. The other ones weren't like hung and trying to cover the areas. They were doing stuff, carrying ammunition, relaying information, useful stuff. But they weren't shooting, or at least not shooting to kill. And what changed that fact, to my surprise at least, was the fact that they changed the targets with which they were practicing. Instead of circles, they started using human contours. And now, most soldiers or even cadets are trained to shoot those types of targets. That's one thing. But there's another thing into it. It becomes muscle memory after a point. So if that becomes muscle memory, you don't really need to think that much. You get exposed to stimuli and you react. And that is how most of today's armies managed to turn their soldiers into better soldiers. I'm not gonna use a specific term that, in my opinion, would be more appropriate. Anyways, so it's 528 and we are 44 out of 100. We're still pretty low player count, which means we can pretty much do whatever we want. So before I went online, I've killed a pig right here, and I was hanging on this rock, waiting to, sorry, waiting to be a little bit hungry. And this Carno player, a really small one, came here, shouted a few times at him, and he just went away. Kind of felt sorry for him, to be honest. Well, what's that? Is that another ball? Oh, yes. Cute boars. Well, I know one thing. When the FPS drops, in this game anyway, that means usually there's another player around. But in this case, I think it's just the AI pigs. So let's see, 100%, 84. I don't know what to do. What should I do? What should I do? Let me just check the map one bit. So usually my hunting grounds are a little bit down south to the northern dome, south of the northwest ridge, but I don't know, I kind of like this place. It's quieter and there's not much player activity here, so I'm pretty confident that I'm not gonna have any visitors around, so that's always nice. Let's just go drink a little bit. And as I said, you never ever want to use your stamina unless you absolutely have to. And this is a lesson that I took to heart, to be honest with you. And I've been playing this game for quite a while now, so I have over 100 hours sunk into this little game, so. And he is. Oh, okay. Oh, there too. Beautiful. So. Oh, bugger me. Oh boy. Oh boy. Where is my big safe rock? There it is. Here is my big safe rock. So I'm gonna hope. How could you climb a rock? Oh, get out of here. I'm trying to eat my little pig in peace. Would you mind? Thank you. Now I think they're hanging around that rock. Perfect. And you might ask, why am I sitting on a rock? The answer is very simple. I don't, underlining don't want to have any visitors, because 9 times out of 10, visitors in this game equals trouble, at least for me. So Good. Stay there. I'm gonna need you when I'm gonna be hungry again. So, coming back to the Roman period, and especially to the imperial uh, period of the Roman Empire, how did the logistics work? So, let's say you or I were a Roman emperor, sorry, and we decided we want to go on a campaign to to defend against, because as a little aside, most Roman wars were presented at least to be defensive wars. We need to defend ourselves against the Gauls, against the Germans, against the Britons, against the Parthians. We need to defend ourselves. What happened after we defend ourselves is something else. So we decided to do that. Well, even if we have at the peak of the empire's power around 300,000 professional soldiers at our disposals, well, we couldn't just gather them all up and start marching towards whatever we want to conquer. No, we need to take into account the fact that we have borders to protect, we have provinces that need the presence of a legion, and to many people, it's surprising to know that a Roman legion was a very good thing to have in a province, not only because of the fact that it can act as a peacekeeping force, but because of the fact that it can help a lot with stuff like administration, policing, infrastructure projects. Because you need to understand the fact that even if legionnaires were career soldiers, most of them were also craftsmen. They have some sort of background in a particular craft that is useful. Now, we decide that we want to, I don't know, invade Dacia. And we're gonna need an army of around 120,000 legionaries and auxiliaries. Sit still, stay calm, good boy. Now, after we decided on the number, we do some calculations of how much fodder for the pack animals we need and for the horses, how much food we need, how much water, what weapons, basically our supply need. And we're gonna send letters to the various provinces of the empire to give us what we need. And we can say we need XYZ amount of stuff. And a particular province may not have what we ask for, but the provincial governors will make sure to buy, or trade commodities for the things we need. We're also going to start preparing our troops. So let's say we need some legions that are stationed way out there in Spain, in Gaul, current France. We're gonna need to send them the notification to get moving. And because of the Cursus Honorum, this was the very last step. After the supplies were gathered and noted, and everybody knew what was basically what they have, and the plan of actions was set, the army would begin to assemble. But a Roman army would never, ever, ever assemble in its full strength. And that is because if an army would assemble in its full strength, I don't care where it was stationed. It can be stationed in the middle of Rome, although that would be impossible because of the Pomerium, but that's a different story. they would have drained that particular area in days, no matter how rich the area was. So basically, most people, and by people I mean Roman generals, Roman Empire emperors, would march their armies into column. When it comes to the Dacian War, they had at least two main columns, but usually there are, I think there were four at some point. And that is important because there are smaller units, well, smaller army sized units, easier to command, easier to control, and easier to feed and supply. Now, before the Dacian wars, Trajan started building roads alongside the Danube, on the Danube's gorge, that facilitate, guess what? Transport. So it could actually send a pretty decently sized army and keep it fed without major concerns. Well, anyways, as you can see, I'm a very active player of the Isle. Oh, we're doing pretty well. We only have a 65 by force. That's kind of a weak one. Anyways, I think our little piggy friend here is bleeding. Yeah, he's bleeding. Let's see if we can sniff him out. No, too close, I think. What is that over there? Hmm. That can only tell me that somebody else had some fun. I have nothing against that, but I only hope he doesn't want to have fun with me. Well, even if he does, I'm higher up and I can make a swift getaway from here. So that would be my little lecture on logistics. Very disorganized, very poorly planned, and very poorly executed. But I hope you enjoy it anyways. That was all from me on this. That being said, I'm gonna take a short break, get myself a cup of tea, so I'll be right back. And I'm back. Okay. Hold on a second. Okay, so our little friend here is still there, but I'm not exactly hungry at this point or at this moment in time, so we'll just hang around, see what's what, and yeah, the player count is starting to grow a little bit, which means our chances of actually meeting somebody are growing. And as I said, after that Cardinal player, hmm, bad. Anyways, when it comes to this game, it is so bad that is actually good. And some people may ask, well, why do I say that? Well, the answer is very simple. As you can see, it's night, 11:18 p.m. Now, I can reasonably well see the pigs, and I can reasonably well see everything around me. But if I would start to, let's say, go and walk this way, I am going to reach a cliff that most likely has a big, great bush on its edge. So I don't know where the edge is. And I might be running. And I'm gonna throw myself off that cliff. Unintentionally. Fun. And now imagine you are playing a Carnotaurus or a Ceratosaurus. Let's say take a Cerato, which actually takes a while to grow. And you do that, and you're like, yes, interesting. And also, why is it good? Well, let's say this little thing, the Omniraptor, which in actual fact is not an Omniraptor, it's a Utah Raptor, or the Velociraptor. You know, the Velociraptors we all know and love from our favorite Jurassic Park trilogy. Now, this thing isn't that big. Let's check the stats. It's only 450 kilograms, has a close to 47 kph max speed, and a bite force of 65, which is basically nothing. As you can see, he's as tall as a human, and very cute little claws over there. Now, why do I like it? Well, it's one of the few dinosaurs who can actually climb stuff. Hmm, interesting sound, what can I say? And because of the fact that it can climb, or rather jump, it's actually quite fun to play because you are off the forest floor. And when you're off the forest floor, very nice things start happening around you without you being actually involved, i.e., people are killing each other like crazy, and even in the southern plains, you can actually be relatively safe from pretty much anything else if you find a good spot on a cliff. Some of you might be surprised and say, well, how is that possible? Well, it's simple. other dinosaurs can climb. I think the only one who can actually climb is the Herrerasaur, but that's more or less a tree dweller. I really didn't like the sound of that. So let's just keep on hanging on. I think I'm gonna kill the pig in the morning, unless something else comes and grabs it, which would be awful, because I would actually have to start finding different pigs. What the hell is that? Theoretically, it has a horror aspect to it, and I've experienced the horror aspect of it when I was playing as a Dinosuchus in the water access, and I was being chased by another Dinosuchus, and that player really had it out for me. Like, we were playing for 2 hours, I think. Cat and mouse. I was trying to steal its food. He was trying to kill me, and at the end of the day, he managed to find me because of another player was another player who he was in cahoots with. So that was fun, and it was actually terrifying. I The adrenaline rush was unbelievable, but other than that, not much. I mean, when you play as a Dinosuchus, you are constantly looking over your shoulder. Even if you are 100% growth, even if you have the perfect diet, and so on and so forth, you can always be jumped by the crocs, and especially in groups, so you're just a little bit paranoid. But as a raptor, not so much. You can actually harass things as a raptor. Doesn't really matter how big they are. You can actually have your fun with them. Oh, the player count is still rising. So, yeah. So anyways, we're getting close to 60% full, and the rain has started, which is nice. Small aside, a lot of your praise in game you're gonna find by the sound. Especially in the jungle, you can't really see much, so you need to use your ears to track stuff down. And as you can see, when it starts raining, really pouring like right now, um, can't really hear much. So I'm gonna take a little break from hanging around, go and drink some water. And some of you might ask, well, why do you go so often to drink? And the answer is, as you can see, I can't turn, and I'm kind of vulnerable because something comes from behind. I can't see it, and right now I can't even hear it. So, the very best course of action is drink. That pig is dead. Oh, he just went to his friend. Great. Let's just use my little umbrella here and wait until I'm at least 40%. But it's gonna take a little while until you get to that point. So basically, anyways, this is how things ended up for me up until this point. So that was me. I hope you really enjoyed this little live stream session.